Hi and welcome to the So Many Things YouTube channel. I'm Tim, your host. Here you get to sew with the boys, quilt with the boys, embroider with the boys, and of course, mostly have some fun, and you might learn something along the way. Stay tuned! Hi and welcome to Quilting with the Boys. Today we're going to quilt with a serger. Well, we're not really going to quilt. We're going to put our top together with a serger. Now, we can't do intricate blocks like we can with our sewing machine, but we can do some big block quilts, and they'll go pretty quickly with the serger. I've selected some fat quarters here from my stash. Oh, that's probably a wrong term. How about I pick some fat quarters out of the store stash, just to have us some accent and something that might look good on camera. Don't worry if you don't like the prints. I'm not really concerned about that. I'm more concerned with that you can see the contrast that we're going to create with some of our lights and darks and of course our black fabric. Now these are just fat quarters. I have 2 black fat quarters. I'm going to use those in the quilt for accent points, shall we say. And the rest of it is going to be kind of like my big blocks. Now at this point you're probably wondering, what's this quilt going to look like? Guess what? You want to know what the quilt's going to look like? Jump to the end of the video and then come back and watch the video. Because it's not really about the quilt. It's really about making it on the serger. Let's get started. We're going to go start with cutting our fabric into pieces that we can use so that we can take advantage of piecing it on the serger. Fat quarters are approximately 18 by 22. There is no guarantee that they are exactly 18 by 22. And if you're like me, I normally wash most of my fabric, so that 18 by 22 is going to draw up a little bit anyway. So I stacked them up, I cut them into 6.5-inch strips, and you can see here I have each one of my 6 colors already cut into strips. Now I had black fabric. Well, I cut the black fabric into 6.5-inch squares. Can you see where I'm going with this? I'm going to put the 6.5-inch square on some of the strips so that I have a separation between the colors. That black is going to make the colors kind of punch up in between. So let me get busy doing that. We'll be back in a second. So as in regular quilting, I still need to keep my 1/4 inch. But I need to check my 1/4 inch on my serger because it's a little different than sewing the 1/4 inch on your sewing machine. Most sewing machines you have a 1/4 inch foot and it works just fine. But here I'm going to use the blade on my serger as my 1/4 inch edge guide. So I need to sew a sample to check my 1/4 inch. So I'm going to step on the pedal and sew myself a little bit. You notice I'm not cutting off, I'm just kind of trimming off little lint pieces along the way. So here's my sample of my 1/4 inch that I need to measure. So I pulled out my handy dandy little measure so I can set my 1/4 inch, and hopefully you can see it here. But you know, it's shy. This is a scant 1/4 inch is what I've actually sewn. I need it to be a full 1/4 inch. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to adjust my blade, making it a little wider. That's moving the blade out from the needle. Just a couple of clicks on it, and I'm going to continue to serge so that I can check it again. So I'm just going to go ahead and serge off the edge of the fabric here. And then I'm going to check my seam allowance here, once again, with my trusty guide. Hopefully we can see our 1/4 inch. I'm still a little shy, so I'm going to make another adjustment. I know that seems like a lot, but it's probably not going to be a lot. This time, because I've already sewn on both sides, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it off so that I'll have a nice clean edge and I won't have to worry about my other threads. So let's put this back underneath our serger and get a little start again. One thing you should note about doing a quilt on a serger is that your seams are not going to be as flat as they are on your sewing machine because we have this little extra bulk. Remember, we have 3 threads here. Now some sergers will do a 2-thread over edge, and that's fine to give you smaller seam allowance or to get you smaller thread buildup on the edge. So when you lay your fabric over and you're opening it up and you're pressing it, you're just going to press it with your finger. You're going to feel that extra seam allowance in there. Because remember, we have 3 threads underneath. We have a needle thread, an upper looper, and a lower looper. So we're going to have some extra bulk in our seams when we're doing a quilt on a serger. We're not doing intricate patterns on a quilt. In other words, we're not going to do mariner compass blocks that have 8 points all meeting in the middle. that's going to add too much bulk on a serger. You would not be happy. So a quilt done on a serger is going to have less seams, less angles, and less pieces. Hence, you can make them a little faster. So let's get on with the construction of our quilt. Now I'm going to attach the black squares to the edge of each one of the colored fabric strips. It's a real simple process. I've already set my 1/4" seam allowance on my serger, and I've got just a regular 3-thread displayed here, so I know I'm working on a 3-thread. And I'm just going to serge. It's real simple. Not cutting off. I'm going to match the edges of my fabric, and I'm going to serge across so that I can make the seam a 1/4" seam allowance. See, there's my seam. And there's my black fabric attached to my yellow fabric. Now, I picked a different black fabric here because I'm just actually going to show you a little trick about why we add the black and about sizing the black fabric when we go to cross-cut it. Isn't it silly that people want to see you sew? Well, let's do a little serging for you. We've laid our black square on top of one of our pieces of our color fabric. I'm going to raise up the front of my foot so I can put it right up next to the blade. Remember, I'm using the blade as my 1/4" guide, and I'm just going to serge to the end. I'm going to stop there and I'm going to grab another piece of fabric and another black square, and I'm just going to kind of chain them together. And sometime in the magic of editing, you will see that there's a whole chain of them put together. I'm just going to serge. Just so you know, we're not all perfect. Well, you know, doesn't this strip look beautiful? It has a lovely yellow into my black. That's actually the right side of the black for a change. And then into my purple, which kind of looks blue in my screen here, but that's a dark purple. But look what's lurking underneath my yellow. Ta-da! Guess what? Yes, I serged 3 layers together on that seam. I guess I'm taking it apart. Time for a little unsewing. So as you can see, I have stitched and attached my black squares to my strips. Now I only had enough black squares for 2/3 of my strips. So I have a whole set of strips that don't have black squares attached. Don't worry, we're going to attach them to the other end, and then we're going to play with the placements on them. If you notice, I have threads hanging off. Ooh, you know, sewers, we don't like that. But on a serger, I don't have to worry about that, because when I do my side seam, the serger is going to actually cut that off for me. But just make sure that falls under the blade, and it'll go away on its own. All right? I'm going to do a little bit more sewing. How's that sound? By the way, my strips, when I put them together, I don't want them to match. I'm going to pick a different color to go at the other end when I add it to that black square. It'll make a difference in the end quilt. Let's just go with that for now, all right? I'll be back in a second with some more sewn strips. So here we're going to do some more sewing, and I'm going to put the black square always on the top so I can always see it when I'm sewing on the serger. That way when I fold it down, both the seam allowances will look the same. So now you've got your strips all sewn together. You've got a color and a black and another color, or do you? I've got 2 blacks in the middle of this strip. What's going on here? Well, this comes when you lay it out. Find yourself a surface to lay the quilt out. Lay the pieces out so that you can see the whole quilt, and you can move pieces around. Maybe I don't like this one, I don't like that one, this one's a little too close to that one, this is too dark, that's too light. That's where you want to kind of play with auditioning your pieces that you've created, or maybe you're going to make a new row to audition into the middle of the quilt or something. I'm going to get back to stitching my quilt together, and maybe we'll have a finished top in just a second. Here's our finished quilt top, all completed on the serger. It's not a matter if you like the colors or don't like the colors, it's a matter of how easy this quilt top is to make on a serger and how quickly it can be done. About 15 minutes of pressing combined before, during, and after. About 12 minutes of cutting, and the rest of the time is spent serging and matching. Now I did spend about 20 minutes on the table laying it out to get my rows to where I wanted them to be, and that's where I came up with that double black box idea in the middle. Hope you found this interesting. Thanks for watching. So I'm sure you're wondering how I got this double block to match a single black block. Well, I folded the single one in half and laid it on the seam in the middle to make it match. That way when I opened it up and stitched, they were perfectly matched to the middle of the two pieces to the middle of the single piece. In other words, the middle seam of the two black blocks to the middle of a single black box. Kind of an easy way to cheat, don't you think? I know math is hard, but I don't need math if I can just fold and pin it. All right? Thanks!